Welcome back to Woman, Conversations in Black and White. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Linda. We're sharing our conversations through video and hopefully podcast with you across racial lines on sensitive topics on purpose to help you understand, to help us understand each other, to help you understand other people, and to encourage you to hold these types of conversations on your own. And today's topic is?
Today's topic is women. Ta-da!
Women.
And so Linda and I just came up with this one quite briefly, but if you look at a lot of the things that are happening right now, I felt and Linda felt is where our women are really being targeted, and a lot of the growth and forward movement that women have worked for individually as groups and collectively as women are really being attacked and threatened and rolled back. Between, if you look at Texas and how they're trying to roll back a woman's right to decide what she wants to do with her own body. If you look at voting and how that's being targeted towards Black people and Black women, especially if you look at Afghanistan and how the US withdrawal and how that really leaves huge questions on how women and girls are going to be treated and educated and valued and allowed to live in society, in their society as a whole, and that impact.
Mm-hmm. It's a global phenomenon.
It is. It is. And now the interesting phenomenon about that is, how do we as women band together in order to promote and propel women, regardless of where they are on the globe?
Oh, those are such good, that's a great question. So, well, I didn't know I had anything to say on this topic, but you know me, I'm likely to come up with something. So, so here's one thing. Bernadette and I have bonded together despite our racial differences on purpose to learn from each other and to open our hearts and to share and learn. This is something that as much as you might think, oh, well, they're both women. It's like women do not always bond together. Sometimes women take each other down. And sometimes women clamber over each other to get the man or the job or the credit or something. And, you know, these are all individual situations. But it's like we as women have to think about bonding together on purpose for good. And I'm sure there's been movies made about this, so I haven't particularly consumed them, but there's been battles between women who are breastfeeding and women who are not breastfeeding, women who are working while they have new babies and women who do not work and stay home while they have new babies. It's like women put each other down rather than trying to stand together as women to move us all forward.
And I think we need to recognize the role that the patriarchy plays in that, because there are only so many spaces that women have yet been allowed to be in, as to where if you're in corporate America, you already know there are only going to be 1 to 2 women on the executive panel. So that creates an environment where you cut and claw whatever woman is considered your competition to get to that quote unquote level of success. So I think we need to recognize that truly, unfortunately, the common enemy of women moving forward altogether, regardless of where you live on the globe, is patriarchy. There is no reason, there is no reason why girls and women are literally afraid they will no longer be able to go to school or to work because they're girls and women. That is a direct result and impact of patriarchy.
Right.
And I don't think sometimes, well, no, I think that's exactly what the patriarchy wants it to be, to continue to have the crab in a bucket mentality. And so we're continually fighting each other when what we should be fighting is the institution of male-dominated society.
Right. Yep. Very well put. Very well put. Do you want to come up with a working definition of the patriarchy? I mean, I know what it is. it is, but it doesn't
I,
hurt to tell our listeners exactly what we're
I,
talking
I think off the cuff, the working definition of patriarchy is always that those who are in power without question is always expected to be male. And the exception to that is always womanness. Like literally Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sotomayor should not be considered exceptional, but it was the norm for everyone as a justice or anyone in power to always be a man. And so that is, to me, that is the working definition of patriarchy. It's questioning the maleness and of assumed power.
Mm-hmm. In other words, to question the patriarchy is to question that, right? Yeah. And the patriarchy itself is a system of male domination. And it's global. It's not only happening here. But there are places where it's more entrenched and places where it's a little less entrenched, but it's a system of male domination of females, and often racism plays into it, systemic racism. Yeah. But I do think that the general system does exist in other countries that may not all be white. There is that possibility. It's not just white, but there can be white patriarchy, and then there's patriarchy as a whole.
Yes, in the United States we have both, but in but in other places it is just male-dominated patriarchy.
Right.
Which continues to keep women and girls at each other's throat, and also unable to be able to perform at whatever highest level of performance they are able to perform at, because there's simply no room for them to be able to see what that is.
Right, exactly. Those doors are slammed shut. A woman may choose to be a wife and mother, or she may choose to be an astrophysicist. But when the doors are slammed shut and she's told only a wife and mother is open to you, that's it. That's an injustice. And it's a denial. When we were talking in another episode of diversity, in other words, you are shutting out half of your brain power. System is shutting out half of the brain power. And then history will cover that up. Like, well, this was invented by so-and-so, but you actually find out it was his sister that invented it, but he got the credit, which is part of the patriarchy too. And there's story after story like that. So
and just like white supremacy, it is very fluid. It is just woven into society. So many of us participate in it without even having any conscious recognition that we do.
Exactly. I mean, a leftover residual of it, and there'd be excuses for every single different district, but you can see that in our state, for example, most of the school superintendents are going to be male. Most of the principals are going to be male. Yes. And most of the elementary teachers are going to be female. And these are just norms. It's like, well, those doors were closed. We didn't really want them, and so there's no point in going after that. And there's whole systems like that. So here's another thing that there was a period of time when Stan and I were studying sanitation in undeveloped countries without plumbing and water systems, city water systems, and so forth, like India and various countries in Africa, where sanitation is a real issue. And because we have an interest in composting, we were looking at it all. And I read 2 or 3 books at that time. But one of the things that I learned is that in a number of countries, both Africa and the Southeast Asia, it is normal for girls to be refused to allow to continue to school when their periods start. And if they're not actually disallowed by the patriarchy, they are made fun of, they are scorned so intensely that they stop going because they can't take it anymore. So when a girl turns 11 or 12 or 13 or 14 and hits puberty, she is no longer allowed to go to school, and that's the end of her education. Instead, she's married off shortly thereafter. That is normal. Now, a counter to that is that when you look at global poverty rates and stabilization of a country, the fastest way to help a country get a higher education rate and to help them stabilize and to get out of poverty or higher income is to educate the girls, to keep those girls in school. It's just uniform. If you can keep the girls in school, and that to me says a lot. It says women change things. When women get educations, they say, you know what, we got to change this. This isn't right. And they will do things. While the men were happy enough with it the way it was. And they lived with the poverty. There was an acceptance of it. And the women, I mean, you know, there could be jokes going clear back to caveman time. We're like, well, this cave is too cold and too dank. We need to fix it up. You know, we need a little air in here. We need things. And so maybe it's genetics, maybe it's biological, but women often are the movers and shakers if they are not tamped down and oppressed and actually terrorized for trying to be that way.
Like, could you imagine how our government here in the United States would work if there were more women in the House and in the Senate?
Wow. It would be exciting.
Yes. I mean, could you wrap your mind around how much more humane and empathetic and probably inclusive our country would begin to look like if there were simply more women in positions to write laws and to move legislation.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's a few notorious representatives notwithstanding right now. There are a few that are players in the patriarchy very, very definitively. But yes, I agree with you completely. As a rule, that is a truth, that there's more a sense of equity and a sense of justice and a sense of movement into greater equality.
Yes. And it's not even as if like, and I think it's more so a mind of making sure that everyone has access to. It's not that you would want to remove or take away from, but just making sure that everyone has access to. Like if you want to be able to go to school, then you should be able to do that without incurring hundreds and $1,000s of debt. If you want to continue to be a working mom, you should be able to do that and know that your child is in the hands of a safe and competent childcare worker.
Right.
If you want your children to have an education that will allow them to move forward in life, state funds should be dispersed in a way where every child has access to those resources to be able to do so.
Right.
So I think the mindset more to me of women is not the removal of, but making sure everyone has access to. And so that is a completely different mindset than that of a male-dominated society or train of thought.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good word. Access is a good word for all that too.
Yes.
So
just simply, just access.
Access.
Equal access. And I think unfortunately, the male-dominated train of thought is there has to be a winner and there has to be a loser, as to where women are like, there is literally space at this table for everyone who wants to be here. So we're going to set a chair and a place set. And if you want to sit down, you're welcome to sit down, but you don't have to. But we're going to make sure if this is where you want to be, there is space for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well said.
Also, I can speak from it personally, then that means we have to take, as women, ownership and investing and empathizing with other women.
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is you and I had the conversation about the last presidential election, and I spoke to how painful it was for Black women, especially, to learn that 55% of white women voted for Trump again, and how incredibly painful that was, and how it was almost 100 years to the date of the women's suffrage movement, which white women left Black women out of.
Right.
And so then you fast forward that, I was watching it was CNN not too long ago, and there was Afghanistan women on there speaking about how the United States, the message that the United States was sending to the world about the value of girls and the value of women, and how we essentially, the United States owed them. And for a moment, I had a feeling of, the United States hasn't done right by me yet as a Black woman who's been here. How is it that we owe you? And it was in that moment that I recognized, so this is how the patriarchy works. If we continue to make separations or divisions, or I'm here but you're there, or it's my turn but you should wait here, that's how we continue to feed the patriarchy.
Wow, Bernadette. Wow. Yeah, I understand that. Well, here's another story, probably 15 years ago. Thank you for sharing that. That's real. 15 or so years ago, I became aware of okay, this might be a trigger warning for somebody, so I'll mention that ahead. How in a number of what we would call undeveloped countries, the process of genital mutilation is still going on.
Yes.
And both a personal account of a woman who escaped after, of another woman who escaped before. These are girls, these are children that ran across the desert for days and finally got to a city and found somebody. But the stories are horrendous. But I think what I found baffling was that the actual perpetrators in this tribal culture, this was Somalia, were the old women.
Yep.
And that just horrified me. And I still can't fully wrap my mind around it, but it's what we're saying. It's like women against women. The patriarchy said, this is the way it is. And so the old women to whom it was done, they were traumatized also. They made sure that all the younger women played the same game and went the same way and had no advantages that they did not have. And so it makes someone like Malala's father such an extraordinary person, because he wanted her to have an education. So at some point we have to say, I didn't get this, but I still want it for you.
Yes.
And we have to have a generous heart to say, this is for the good of humanity. And I wish I'd had it, but since I don't have it, I still want it for you. Yes. And that's part of how women have to start looking at things with other women, is we have to stand by each other and stop being divided by this patriarchal system that says men are always at the top and you grab on for a few crumbs and better play the game if you want your crumbs, you know. If we're not going to do that, we have to stand together. Yes. And I think that's a really strong thing. People have to say, no more of that, no more of that, whatever it is.
But I think that speaks to what you and I essentially always speak to during our talks, and that is recognition, awareness, and making heart-to-heart connections. Because even though the United States has not done right by me as a Black woman as of yet, I don't know what it is like being an Afghan woman and knowing that my daughter will never be educated simply because she is a girl. I don't know what that is like.
Right.
And so unless I try to imagine what that is like, I will never do anything about it. And so I had to get outside of me and what I feel like my just due should be, to recognize that as a fellow woman and a fellow mother, this should not be a concern for her.
Right. Right.
Just like you've recognized as a fellow mother, you never had to worry about your children driving and the interactions they would have with the police.
Right.
And you don't want that to be a reality of mine. I should not want that to be a reality for the millions of Afghan women who that is their current and present reality.
Right.
But that doesn't happen, as you and I always say, unless we make heart connections.
Right. I've had the phrase "for the common good" going through my mind for several weeks. And it's like, Okay, this is kind of a big thought, but I'm going to throw it in here.
Yes.
It's like those of us that were indoctrinated into a certain system, whether it's systemic racism or a dysfunctional family, you know, you play by the rules. This is how it is. You follow the rules. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of us, in a rather natural thing, we broke out of that, said, I don't want to do my family like I was raised. I want to do something different. I'm not going to do it that way. And we become rebels in some small way against that system. We become individualistic and we do it. Well, I'm talking personally, but it also happens on a cultural level. The United States is a glowing example of individualism. We said the individual is what matters. And I believe that's gone too far. But I will say that without that individualism, we wouldn't have a lot of the creative forward movement that we've had, because various people along the way broke out of what was supposed to be and did something different. So that's not right. We're doing it this way. And that breaking out, that individual breaking out, is a forward movement for civil rights, for women's rights, for education, for a lot of different things. But now we're in a place where I believe we have to stop thinking of only what's right for me. What is right for me? I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to get vaccinated because it's not right for me. But I don't give speeches on this, so I'm not trying to do that. But it's just I'm actually a person who has had very few vaccines in my life, mostly my childhood ones and an occasional tetanus, and that's it. I said no to everything else. So it's not like I'm a sucker for vaccines, but it's just like, yeah, but this is like for the common good. I have to do this for everybody. I have to do this because this is the right thing for everybody. And as I watch all these battles go on, I've thought so much about it. Like we're on a journey from everybody follows the rules, everybody does it my way, to no, we're going to break out. We're going to make new rules. We're going to do things differently. Back to, okay, I'm not doing this because I'm following the rules. I am doing this because this is for the common good. And as we think about other women, I mean, maybe she's not your best friend. Maybe that country has done some stupid things in the past, you know, but it's like somehow we have to get past that and say, what's the highest and best for the common good here? Because pretty much humanity won't survive if we don't start looking at the common good. And it's not because somebody made up a bunch of rules. It's because this is how life works. Life is more cooperative than it is competitive. Biologically, that's how it works. More of nature cooperates in strange and miraculous ways than competes, even though you might see a bear eat a salmon and two elk fighting. But those are the unusual things. Mostly nature cooperates and works together and works out these amazing systems. And as humans, we have to start looking at what's for the highest best, the highest good for everybody. That was my little speech. I'm sorry.
That's true. No, I think that is wonderful. And I think that should bring a different awareness and level of responsibility for women to own. Since we are the givers of life in all species, women are the givers of life. We should also, I believe, then be the guardians of life and how people get to live and experience their lives.
Right.
And so if we stand up and with each other and choose to be the guardians with and for each other, then we can make shifts around the globe for the betterment of not just women. Women will make choices that will better all of us. That is just what women do.
Yes. Women do that.
Yes.
They make choices that are better for children and choices that are better for families and better for men.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, for all of us. So we have got to stand up with and for each other, because we will always choose the greater good. Women always make the decisions that are going to be for the common good and for the greater good. But we have got to stop standing against each other and stand with each other in order to shift some things. We got huge things. We got COVID, we got climate change. Our world is turning on us. we need to make decisions that are going to be better for the greater good. And that means women empowering women.
Right. Exactly. And good women. But
Yes.
by and large, that goes with it, by and
Yes.
large. Okay. Thank you, Bernadette.
Yes. I think this is our first talk, as many as we have done, actually dedicated to women. And we're woman to woman.
I agree.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes.
It's good to get into the global aspects, the up close and personal aspects, all of it. So
yes.
Thank you. Good one.
So as we say, start talking, keep talking. And we really look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.